Welcome everyone, Costin here with the discussion about the Dark Elven Legendary Lords in Total War Warhammer 3. The Dark Elves as a race do hit the sweet spot between being too weak and being too strong. They're not too strong, they're not too weak, they are in a pretty good spot. But let's talk about the Legendary Lords. And number 6, it would have to be Malekith. The Witch King himself, the leader of the Dark Elven race, is also the weakest of all of the Legendary Lords of the Dark Elves right now. He does get a diplomatic relations benefit with fellow Dark Elves and an upkeep benefit, a fairly substantial one, for Blackguard, Dread Spears, Bleak Sword, and Dark Shards. The Blackguard is not going to matter. The Bleak Swords, not really all that significant either, though Dread Spears and Dark Shards having upkeep benefit for him is going to be pretty nice. But that's kind of where it ends. He does get a personal benefit of control, construction cost, and reducing enemy leadership in local region, and he does have a special skill tree to get more slaves, and as well as more diplomatic benefits, control benefits, growth, construction costs, construction time, upkeep, income from post-battle loot, and income from looting and sacking settlements. Though, as you note, most of these benefits are going to affect him only. See, some of the best Legendary Lords help their entire faction. Malekith is pretty selfish, actually, and he also starts in a really bad position. The diplomatic benefit is going to help you get deals with fellow Dark Elves, like for instance here I've gotten trade agreements with Hargonef and with Clan Karund, and I could get some more later on, or very soon enough, once Malus Darkblade gets a settlement. So once he gets a settlement, right there, I'll be able to get the trade agreement with him as well. But the problem, Malekith, there's two big problems that I see with Malekith. First off is his skill tree. See, Malekith is a good melee combatant and also a good caster. But the problem is you just don't have enough points to fill out his casting tree and his melee tree, so you're going to have to choose. My personal bit of advice is focus on melee, make him more powerful, though he's certainly not the strongest melee combatant either, and don't focus too much on the casting tree. That's one of the issues, because he's a hybrid lord, and those lords generally tend to be weaker than dedicated magic users or dedicated melee users or dedicated fighters. But the biggest problem for Malekith is his starting position. He starts here in Nagaron, and he wants to deal with the Skaven over here of Clan Septic. Now the issue is that as you deal with them, and they do hold the Iron Mountains, they do hold the settlement of Harkaldra, they have the Altar of Ultimate Darkness and Eldar Spire. The problem is that you're going to soon encounter Grumbrindle, who wants to take you out with extreme prejudice for historical reasons. You know, Malekith starting the War of the Beard or War of Vengeance. So that's already a powerful foe, though honestly with Dark Shards that you can recruit from turn 1, because you do start with the barracks. For Dark Shards and Shielded Dark Shards, that shouldn't be too big of an issue. The real problem is further to the north with Valkia the Bloody, who is one of the more powerful Legendary Lords in the game, and she will start with a vassal that has 2 settlements. Like, she'll just take this Dark Fortress, sell it, and use it, and then she'll fight the war with Grand. And then you will have to deal with Valkia herself. And then further to the south, if you think that's over, no, you've got Taurox, you've got Alifanar as well. You've got plenty of issues to deal with. And yes, you do have some allies in Crone Hellebron as well as the minor Dark Elven factions, but it is a pretty rough campaign start over here in his position, and that's going to make his campaign probably the hardest of all the Dark Elven Legendary Lords currently in the game. And he isn't so powerful as to completely steamroll everyone in his path. He doesn't start with the Black Arc, getting one can take a while. He doesn't necessarily even have that great rights. I mean, Sacrifice to Cain is pretty good at the moment for the income from post-battle loot, casualty captured, then casualty replenishment. But yeah, Malekith hasn't aged very well. I mean, he already had a lot of issues from Warhammer 2. I mean, Immortal Empires, he was also one of the weakest legendary lords of Dark Elves, and that's carried over into Immortal Empires. Now, at number 5, we have Crone Hellebron. For her, it's the same issue in a way that Malekith has, though instead of having to deal with Valkia and Grombrindal, so she has Valkia close enough to her over here, and then she has Sigvald. I think I would prefer dealing with Grombrindal versus Sigvald, although to be fair, you do have a pretty decent expansion path over here, taking out the greenskins that you start at war with, then dealing with Sigvald, and then maybe turning around to deal with Valkia, helping Malekith out. However, she has improvements to Death Hags and Witch Elves, plus bonuses for all armies against High Elves. Okay, the plus bonuses like 10 leadership against High Elves, weapon strength when fighting High Elves, diplomatic relations by minus 25 with High Elves, and recruit rank for Death Hags and Witch Elf units. I'm not sure if that counts the Death Hag hero, though. If it does, it can be nice, though I don't necessarily think that's the case. And then when it comes to her personal benefit, she gets a minus 50% upkeep for Witch Elves, Sisters of Slaughter, and Harganeth Executioners, and 10% weapon strength for those units as well. And in terms of her unique skill tree, she gets Favor of Cain, melee defense for those units, bonus versus infantry, casualties post-battle, loyalty for new recruits faction-wide. Oh, it's lovely. She gets the same benefit that Malekith gets in terms of loyalty, though she does need to spec into it, but you are going to spec into it. Income from saves, 5% faction-wide. Now, the thing about Hellebron is this. The units she's buffing, beyond the fact that they're higher tier units, and thus aren't necessarily very easy to acquire, they're not really that much worth it, to be honest. I mean, yeah, if you get her, they can be, because she can maintain them for very cheap, because generally they're more expensive units. But at the same time, compared to the Dark Shards or Blackheart Corsair stacks, I would say they're absolutely not worth it. A couple of them absolutely can be nice to have with Hellebron, but she's buffing units that a lot of people don't really care about. And that's something that's going to drag her down. She doesn't have the best army as a result of it. I mean, if you at least Malekith gives you a significant upkeep benefit for Dark Shards, despite the fact that he's in trouble in a lot of ways. I would say the one reason I would rank Hellebron higher is that she at least has a better expansion path than Malekith. Malekith has to go all over this corner, then deal with Grombrindal, deal with his territory, so he has to go from here to here, and it's not a straight path. He has to go over the mountains for the Altar of Ultimate Darkness, which can be annoying. So Hellebron has an easier time from that perspective, but honestly I'd say in terms of late game potential, beyond the early game, Malekith is even better than she is, because he gets bonuses for units that you would more logically use. She is not worth it from my perspective. I mean, she does come with the same DLC as Alariel. I got that DLC obviously for Alariel. I never bothered to play her because I never saw her to be that good. At least it's better than Immortal Empires and Warhammer 2. I suppose they have changed her, they have improved her, but the units she's buffing are just not units you care about, really. I mean, I guess you could get some Sisters of Slaughter for their dodge ability, but one of the things to say about Sisters of Slaughter is that they can take 2 turns to recruit them, which is time wasted. So it's not a great situation to be in, it's not a great campaign, and your campaign objectives are, well, the same as everyone else. Go kill the High Elves, pretty much. Not a great spot. You don't get the diplomatic benefit as Malekith does, though you are in a better position. Though that better position is also going to include dealing with Alif Anar. At least I forget that, because, yeah, you start right across from him. Though maybe you could rush him very quickly and then deal with Sigvald and Valkia. So yeah, not the great position, but beyond that, it's just really the faction benefits are not really that significant either. Now at number 4, we have Rakarth, who starts in Lustra, and he gets bonus points for that because Lustra is a pretty good area of the game at the moment in Immortal Empires. We'll see if that ends up changing. Maybe, who knows, they'll decide to add in more Legendary Lords down here. Now he gets benefits to monsters. Whenever you fight a battle, you can get some monsters post-battle. So for instance, I fight this battle, right? I have to resolve it. And if you lay out Carrion, you can increase the chance of attracting monsters. This can also be improved through his special skill tree, but he starts with some harpies. Pretty decent. But after that, you can get some really powerful units, Carnosaurs, all that kind of stuff. He does get the minus 10% upkeep to monstrous units, and on top of that, he does also get recruitment duration of -1 for all monstrous units. So, interesting, that's not being said over here. There's some things that your faction does have that aren't being said there. Then he gets personal benefits, like no upkeep cost for harpy units, armor piercing for harpies, post-battle loot, casualty replenishment in foreign territory, which is pretty sweet. Benefits to hydras, benefits to Reaper bolt throwers and chariots, increases the chance that monsters will be added to your army, recruit ranks for cold ones, and chariots, stock for cold ones, invisible cold ones, okay. And recruit rank for monster units faction-wide, 10% weapon strength for Black Dragon, as well as a passive ability, Murderous Prowess, for monstrous units, which is something that Dark Elves would get once they take or do enough damage or kills in a battle, but now it applies to monster units as well. So they just basically get this, which is a fairly significant benefit. So he's really the guy who makes a monster army Doomstack work very, very well. And he does start in a pretty good position, and he has faction benefits that just end up working. Oh yeah, the recruitment duration is not faction-wide, it's for him only. So he also gets melee defense and 2 abilities as well to him. He's in a pretty good spot. If you want to play a monster army as the Dark Elves, and it's not just Dark Elven monsters, not just Black Dragons and Hydras and Harpies, it's also Lizardmen monsters, then I can strongly recommend Rakarth. His campaign can be a lot of fun because the geography of Lustria, the way it's designed, is pretty good. He does start with some Dark Elves to the north, some Siege to the north as well, but he's in a fairly safe and isolated position in a lot of ways, and that can make his campaign a lot more fun and a lot easier to start with than either Malekith or Hellebron. Though you will have to deal with the Cult of Sotik and Itza and the Dwarves, etc. The Dwarves of the Spine of Sotik. But once you've dealt with that, you are in for a fairly good time if you are playing as Rakarth. He is strong, he is good, and he does certainly have a different gameplay style than the other Dark Elven Legendary Lords. Though, if there is a downside, is that pretty much all of his neighbors are going to despise him, with the exception of the Bloodhall Oven, which is not really going to survive for a very long time, considering the Hunts Marshal is going to go after them. But yeah, it's a pretty good campaign. I could recommend it, especially if you want to play in a different style than pretty much every other Dark Elven Legendary Lord. And he's available for free. So hey, take your pick. Now at number 3, we have Morathi. Morathi has been one of the stronger Legendary Lords for the Dark Elves ever since Warhammer 2 came out. She would generally conquer half of Ulthuan in Immortal Empires, and she's still pretty strong in Immortal Empires here as well. In fact, in some ways, she's actually even stronger. Now, you may not realize what makes her so great. I mean, she only gets a hero action cost benefit and a construction cost for a sorcery building, so a couple of buildings, or only one building chain, I think it is, actually. And on a personal level, she does get Lords in this character region have a chance to gain loyalty, which is not really going to be that significant cooldown, -5 turns for sacrifice to Hecate, and slave costs for that sacrifice. The thing about that sacrifice is that it's not particularly that important. So, she doesn't really gain significant benefits, or so it would seem, until you realize she's using Slaaneshi Corruption, with all of the benefits that come from Slaaneshi Corruption. Every time she takes a settlement, she will institute a great deal of corruption from it. Corruption works extraordinarily well in Immortal Empires or in Warhammer 3. So for instance here, I've taken the Ziggurat of Dawn 1 turn ago, and now it's already a 19 corruption. That's an income from slaves of 7%. However, 100 corruption, or at a very high level, I think it's between 80 to 100, you get this. You get attrition for non-chaos worshipping armies, 5 control, faction slave capacity of 250, and 10 slaves per turn, as well as an income from slaves of 15%. That's Morathi's faction benefit. That amount of control, the benefit to your economy of 15% from slaves, is fairly substantial. So for instance here, I'm making, and it's barely turned 10, I'm making almost 5,000. Now granted, I'm also spending 5,000, over 5,000, to maintain Morathi's army, as well as this particular army. Morathi herself is also a great combatant, though she does have the same issue as Malekith between Spellcaster and Melee Lord. She's not necessarily as good of a Melee Lord as Malekith, although she's more nimble, so it's easier for her to go in and go out instead of Malekith on his big-ass dragon. In terms of her special skill tree, she does get the hero recruit rank benefit to assassins, campaign movement range to all characters faction-wide, melee attack and melee defense for Shades and Dark Riders, Doomfire Warlocks, and Scourge Runners, actually, when it comes to melee defense. Those are pretty good units, though you don't necessarily care too much about Dark Riders, but Shades, yeah, Shades, Doomfires can be pretty solid to use. Plus 5 control, plus 5 corruption when in own province. Casualties post-battle loot and casualties and post-battle loot from all characters. Ward save to her army, casualty replenishment, diplomatic relations with Norscan beastmen, more Suneshi corruption, and upkeep on minus 30%. She's got a good skill tree. She's a good fighter. She's a good caster. She's got incredible faction-wide benefits, and the area she starts in is relatively safe, actually. Yeah, you have Hexoatl here to the south. They're going to be an issue, but you can take down Hexoatl and give the region to maybe the Skaven. Now, what's weird is when Morathi is played by the eye, she ends up in a war with these Skaven more often than not.
I lead.
Actually, even though she can make a military alliance with them very easily. This is on Legendary, by the way, and you can use Nakari as an ally. Nakari isn't going to be the best Lord, nor the best Conqueror, but he's certainly going to keep, or it is going to keep, the High Elves occupied, while you take some initial territories, like deal with the Norscans here, deal with Hexoatl, maybe deal with, maybe give this territory to the Skaven and let them deal with the Imperials, or deal with the Imperials themselves. So you don't want to colonize the jungle. I'm just doing it because I want to get rid of Skeggi, and then go and conquer Ulthuan. Make alliances with Noctilus and the like, as well as other people or creatures that want to conquer Ulthuan. You're in a good position to do so. You've got significant economic bonuses. Yeah, the ancient city is nowhere near as powerful as it used to be, but all the same, it's still a pretty good structure when you think about it. Like 10% research when you get to tier 5, growth, control. At tier 1, just growth and income. At tier 2, research starts coming in. Is in a pretty good, she's in a pretty good spot, I would say. Pretty powerful, pretty safe position, significant benefits. The corruption alone would make her one of the better ones, but it's not just really the corruption alone. She does have a good skill tree as well. Now at number 2, we have Lokhir Fellheart of the Blessed Dread, and it is quite blessed. See, most of the all of the Dark Elven Legendary Lords require a right to get a Black Arc. He doesn't! He gets a Black Arc for every single port, so you can have more Black Arcs than anyone else. Like, I think here, I have 3 ports over here in the Jade River, and I started with 1 over here. So I think I can get 4 Black Arcs. I already have 2. Actually, when dealing with Lokhir, it's actually quite annoying having to chase down his Black Arcs to kill his faction permanently, because I think you do need to do that. And that, of course, can be an issue. But it goes further than that. he gets 5% income from saves, doesn't seem that significant, but then he gets the sacrifice to enough Rema. And this sacrifice is quite something. 50% income from sacking settlements, 50% from raising settlements, 20% campaign movement range, Black Arc growth, armor piercing for Black Arc Corsair units, fear for Corsair units, stock for Corsair units. This guy is insane in this right, and it lasts 10 turns with 25 turn cooldown, so you won't have it on permanently. But once you get it, it's like, this is my I win button for Lokhir. And he already has a really, really powerful army, as Black Arc Corsair units are some of the best units that Dark Elves can recruit early on in the game. They're really good infantry units that have a lot of armor, leadership, and really good stats overall. Now here I've been trolled a bit, well, not necessarily trolled, but because he's given me a bunch of spawn, which are pretty decent units. Now the Black Arcs, they're highly beneficial because they give you this barracks chain from tier 1. So you recruit the Black Arc, as I have over here, and you will get that barracks chain. This will allow you to get Black Arc Corsairs, but at tier 2 it gives you Dark Shards and Bleak Swords and Dark Shards with shields as well as a Master, though it won't increase your Master capacity, so that has a bit of a downside. All the same, it is incredibly potent. But that's not where it ends, because Lokhir himself gets some fairly substantial benefits. Campaign movement range, control, leadership for Black Arc Corsair units, 100% armor-piercing missile damage for handbows, basically. Stock for his own army outside of the right. Vanguard deployment and for Corsairs. Vanguard deployment and stock when unmounted for him, because he can mount a dragon. Though you're probably going to want to mount that dragon all the same most of the time. Black Arc growth plus 5 for all armies. 5% income from ports. Black Arc bombardment, because Black Arcs do have artillery. Upkeep for units and Lord recruit rank. This is probably one of the strongest skill chains of all of the Dark Elven Legendary Lords, if not the strongest skill chain of all of the Dark Elven Legendary Lords. And on top of that, the Black Arc he starts has a special structure for more casualties post-battle, sacking settlements, and campaign movement range. And Lokhir starts in Cafe, which is, like Lustra, one of the best areas in the game at the moment. He's in a really, really good spot. Some people say, oh, I struggle with it. It's like, well, don't. Get a lot of Black Arc Corsair units, and yeah, sure, you might end up vulnerable. Make alliances with Snitch. He'll help you out in great measure. Conquer the coast and then worry about moving to get your special weapons. But yeah, there's not really much to say about Lokhir. He's strong. He's a strong melee combatant. He starts with the sorceress, though most of them do start with the sorceress or some magic user, or they're a magic user themselves. But yeah, he's in a really good spot, being able to recruit pretty good units from very early on. Much earlier on than most of the others, which gives him a significant amount of power, because Dark Shards with shields are better than your regular Dark Shards. He doesn't have quite the same economy as Morathi, at least from the corruption benefits, but he will more than make up for it with sacking. You can genuinely be one of the richest and most powerful factions in the game. This is very early on, and I'm rank 2. And I haven't struggled with this. Like, this is rank turn 15, and I'm basically unstoppable at this point. The only thing is you will want to protect your Black Arcs, because they aren't necessarily very strong, since they don't have a proper lord. Although you can level up the guys leading them, give them some combat abilities, something the ogres could really need with their use with their camps, by the way. But yeah, Lokhir is fairly strong, in a fairly good position, and has some incredible faction benefits. You can't do wrong if you're playing Lokhir. Finally, at number 1, we have Malus Darkblade, the edgiest of all of the edgelords that make up the Dark Elves in general. But what makes him number 1? Well, for starters, it is his campaign position. He starts in the Northern Chaos Wastes, and he is quite likely the most powerful thing there is there. Archaon might be more powerful, but he is, well, if I move the map, he's way over here, so he's gonna take some time to get to you, close to you. The Demon Prince, he's a joke for you to deal with. So Malus Darkblade is incredibly potent. The Dark Elves themselves with their Dark Shards, and well, you start with the Black Arc. You do need the right, unlike Lokhir, to make one, but you do start at least with one, so you're going to have an immense amount of combat power from the very start and really good recruitment from the very start. Some really good options available over here. And well, this Black Arc does certainly start with some fairly nice benefits, quite a bit of growth to spend. But really, what elevates Malus Darkblade is the following. When you look at his faction benefits, it just says he gets Whispers of Tsarkon and he's possessed by him. He also gets an income benefit from mines, gold mines, and marble quarries. That may not necessarily seem too substantial, though it certainly makes those structures more useful. And he personally gets benefits to recruitment costs and upkeep of Cold One Dread Knights, and Chariot units. And he is also immune to cast Undivided Corruption and cast Waste Attrition, which is pretty nice considering he is fighting in the cast wastes. But what really elevates Malus is the possession mechanic. So he starts off full possessed, though he can get some potions from Malekith, which reduces his possession. So for instance, if I were to drink it, it would basically cure me of the possession. When you are possessed, you get substantial benefits to yourself and to your army. So he gets melee attack, melee strength, missile strength, and the ability to transform into Tsarkon, though that's going to cost your health, but you also get the diplomatic benefit with Demons of Chaos when you are possessed. 40% ward save when you're full possessed is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Like a lot of missile strength, melee attack. It is an incredibly powerful army. Or you can use the potion and cure the possession temporarily. Though it does cost money initially, but after that, once you do complete some objectives, I think you will be able to, like if you take the entirety of 10 provinces, you get the elixir, you get the recipe for the elixir, so it's no longer going to cost money. I would probably need to drink 2 potions one time to cure his possession. Now, here's the thing about them, right? You take the Black Rock, I just auto-resolved it, and another benefit, major benefit for Malus Darkblade is that he does start with Hag Grief. But you can get rid of it, and it's better to get rid of it, and get 20,000 money initially. That is quite a substantial campaign start. And then he has started recruiting Black Arc Corsair units, start going into his skill tree. And if we use the potion, and use it twice, granted, use it twice, we get 100 growth, right of the War Master, minus 15 corruption in all provinces, though he does also suffer quite a bit in terms of his melee attack. I mean, it's not like he's bad without it, but yeah, his personal combat ability is going to suffer quite a bit. All the same, 100 growth is absurd. It's absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, it does cost you to maintain it, but you do gain loyalty, you get right of the War Master, you do disable the demonic possession, so his personal combat ability is going to suffer. But you're going to also perform a rite to get the full bloody doom stack. This is incredibly absurd. This army right here is absurdly powerful. And it's a proper army, I think. You don't lose it either. So it does have 50 turns cooldown, but this thing would smash anything in its path with ease. Anything in its path. You want to get the doom stack from turn 1? A genuine end game doom stack from turn 1? Sure, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to maintain it, but holy crap, do you have a great deal of power available in Malus Darkblade. There are legendary lords that are powerful, but then there's legendary lords that are so strong and so powerful that they summon an entire unstoppable army. There's no army in the game that can stand up to this until, like, I know, turn 50 or so, and even then it's like this army would be able to hold its own quite very well against all of that. Against anything that the game could throw against you, except the end game events. Like, this could be useful, of course, against the end game as well. So yeah, an incredible amount of power, you can also summon the army and then allow full position if you so desire, or cure it and then cure it. The possession game is in full swing. It is interesting dealing with Malus Darkblade. He is incredibly powerful. Like, oh, you need a great deal of combat power, you can allow full position, though it does have fairly lengthy cooldown. But yeah, he is strong. He is incredibly strong, without the joke. Like, this guy demolishes everything in his path. His army is unstoppable, and he can summon another unstoppable army from very early on, though affording that unstoppable army, that second unstoppable army, would be quite a feat early on. But once you do get the economy going, the Dark Elves do have a good economy, yeah, you're gonna be really, really strong, really good. And that's all there is to say about Malus Darkblade. A guy possessed by a demon, literally fighting in hell itself, is the strongest of all of them. He's got great, I wouldn't say he has a great economy per se, but he has great growth, and that makes him incredibly potent, because that 100 growth would allow you to get your regions to an extremely high level, and you have the money to support that, right? You have the money because you start with a fortune if you do give up Hag Grief, and you don't need to worry about Hag Grief. Like, Hag Grief is way over here. The benefit, by the way, of starting with Hag Grief is you do have sight over Nagron, so you can make diplomatic deals with the other factions. But yeah, incredibly potent, incredibly powerful. In fact, I would dare argue that fighting a campaign of this is total war, where you declare war on everyone, could very well work in a very good fashion for him. But yeah, that's all there is to say about the Dark Elves. They're in a pretty good spot. I would highly recommend playing them. You will have a good time playing the Dark Elves at the moment. They're not so overpowered that you just completely steamroll the entire campaign map. They do offer a decent level of challenge, but they do have some really nice effects to go along with it. Especially the more powerful Legendary Lords. Be a Malus, Lokhir, Morathi. Would recommend those quite strongly.